Today's Wednesday, it's the 25th of September, it's 2024, and well, I've got a particular item of news that's caught my eye, not just in the local press, but certainly in the British press as well. And it's very much concerning Mallorca and Spain in general, actually. So what I've been looking at is headlines which say something like, UK tourists visiting Spain warned of new Big Brother rules at hotels from October the 1st. Another one reads, panic in Spain as fury grows over the impossible new October the 1st tourist rules. Fury over Big Brother law that will force Brits to hand over sensitive information whenever they visit Spain from October. And even our own Mallorca Daily Bulletin, new hotel registration scheme to be scrapped in Spain. So what all these are about? I always get a little bit suspicious whenever I see these sorts of headlines in newspapers like the Daily Mail, the Daily Express. Birmingham Live is one which has certainly come up recently with lots of bad press for Spain and Mallorca. So the best thing to do really is to go and find out what this is all about and do a little bit of research and go back as far as you can to the source of this information. Well, my source for the rest of this little bulletin is going to be from the European Travel Agents and Tour Operators Association, who've actually written quite an extensive article about this particular royal decree that was brought into force in 2023. So it's actually a decree that stems back from 2021, and it's not something then that is actually new. It's been around for a long time, but the date of October the 1st, 2024 is very important, as you'll see as we go on. So the European Travel Agents and Tour Operators Association simply say that, in short, the Spanish government has approved a royal decree by which people or companies that offer lodging and or car rentals will need to share a very broad list of personal data with the Spanish enforcement authorities, in other words, the police. So what are these things? So it's in a royal decree, and you can look it up. It's Royal Decree number 933/2021. And the obligations apply to services, whether offered by businesses or otherwise, that provide overnight accommodation in exchange for economic consideration. In other words, you get paid for it. So if you're renting out your property for tourists, you might well have the ETV, the license to do that, then this applies to you. And I'll talk about penalties that if you don't do it later on. So e-commerce platforms, it applies to those. That's things like Airbnb, I'm thinking, or any other travel agent who might be doing this. They have to provide their information that they've acquired. Lodging activities open to the public and regulated by the corresponding laws, such as hotels, rural houses, hostels, those sorts of things. Camping facilities, where you might go camping or stay in a mobile home. Tourism operators that act as intermediaries between the lodging and the companies and the consumers. That's the travel agents, I suppose, or the Airbnb, the Booking.com, all of that sort of thing. And traditional car rental companies. All of those are covered by this. So, where does it lead us? All of the companies that are covered by this decree, so the hotels, the businesses, the travel agents, the car rental companies, must first of all sign up to a register and a platform. It's going to be an electronic platform where they're going to be submitting this data. And this data will apply to all travellers, irrespective of their ages. So even children have their data collected, though together with that there has to be something from an accompanying adult for anyone under the age of 14. And the data that's being collected, and it's really quite extensive, the data that's going to be collected includes your name, your surname, your second surname if you have one. Spanish people have two surnames. your gender, your ID number, the document supporting that number, that's the passport or the ID card, the type of document, whether it's an ID card or a passport or a foreigner's ID, the nationality, the date of birth, the place of habitual residence, that includes your full address and the region where you're from and the country, your landline number, your mobile number, your email address, the number of travellers that are in this particular group and how they're related to each other, and curious one, your GPS data. I suppose that's if you're renting a car. Concerning the actual transaction, that's how you paid for it, how you did the transaction, all the contract data, including the reference number, the date, the signatures, the contract execution data, including the date, the hour of entering, the hour of exiting the property data, including the full address, the number of rooms, the internet connection that was provided, yes or no. The payment data, including type, that is, did you pay by cash, did you pay by credit card, did you pay by bank transfer? They want all of the details of that. The identification of the means of payment, that is what type of card it was, and the card number if you paid with a credit card. If not, it's your bank details. If it's cash, well, I guess the amount of cash. There is a limit, of course, in Spain as to how much you can pay in cash. And so if it's being paid in cash, then that limit has got to be adhered to. Who made the payment, so whose credit card was it? The expiration date on the card, the date of the payment, the amount that was paid, and any other identification of the transaction or authorization. It really is a huge amount of data that's being collected. So why are they collecting this data? Well, apparently that's a little bit vague and it's a bit unclear, and it's got far-reaching consequences. So in the preamble they say that the data is going to be collected covering much wider purposes than previously, and that this data can be used by the security forces. So it's basically a security issue, and the security bodies, in the performance of their respective powers and their field of prevention. So it's really for detecting a crime. So if there's a crime, they're going to be using this data, so they've got access to this data, and it should only be used for that particular purpose. In particular, of course, they're going to be interested in terrorism. This data is going to be retained for a maximum period of 3 years. It's a long time that they're going to be holding on to it. Now, because they are collecting such sensitive data and they're storing this data and they're keeping it for up to 3 years, there is a lot of concern that there is a potential infringement, particularly of a decree 2016 number 680, which concerns the storing and collecting of this data and how it can then be used. So within this EU law, it says, in accordance with this directive, member states shall protect the fundamental rights and freedoms of natural persons, and in particular their right to the protection of personal data. And lower down it says, collected or specified explicit and legitimate purposes and not processed in a manner that is incompatible with those purposes. Adequate, relevant, and not excessive in relation to the purposes for which that it is processed, and kept in a form which permits identification of the data subject for no longer than necessary the purpose for which it was processed. Now, all of those are a little bit dodgy, I suppose, when it comes to the particular decree that Spain has passed. The purpose laid down in this article seems too vague and too far-reaching may be considered to be explicit as provided by this paragraph. The variety and far-reaching amounts of data collected applicable even to minors is clearly excessive in relation to all of the article. and it's questionable whether the data retention for 3 years in particular when collected on minors is considered necessary as provided by this article. So lots and lots of questions, and we're getting lots of reactions. So just going back a little bit in history, because this decree comes from October in 2021, and it actually came into force on the 2nd of January 2023. But now it's going to be enforced from the 1st of October, which is only a few days away. And so which of the obligations that are foreseen under this decree? And it's the document registration, I think, that's going to be causing a lot of concern. And who is actually required to process this data? So I suppose in a professional hotel system, then there's going to be somebody assigned to that job. But some people might be having a guest house. If you've got a guest house and somebody's coming to stay in your home, as it were, do you still have this obligation? Yes, you do. You have to process the data, and it's mandatory that this information is processed and goes to the relevant authorities. So these people, everybody who's applying, who's providing accommodation, must be registered and must submit the data. And what happens if I don't do that? What happens if the data is not submitted or is submitted erroneously? So if you actually enter some false data concerning the guests, or you omit to put something that you should have put in, then there are fines, and the fines range from 100 to 600 euros. If you're not registered as an accommodation providing guests with particular services, then the fines rise from 601 to 30,000 euros. So you must make sure, if you've got a hotel or some accommodation or even a car rental company, that you are in possession with all of the relevant information about providing this data. And what happens if you say, well, no, I'm not going to tell you my credit card number, or I'm not going to give you my home address or my telephone number? Well, you can be denied the access to that accommodation, and that probably will be what will have to happen. You're going to have to give all of this information to the people who are providing you with accommodation. Well, that's what this decree says. It's coming into force on the 1st of October. It's 2024. And from that day, unless something happens between now and then, that's what's going to happen. And how do I feel about it? Well, actually, I'm a bit concerned. We're going to be going away. We're going to actually be staying in a hotel. We will actually be there before this comes into force. And while we're actually staying at the hotel, this rule will come into force. So we're going to have first-hand knowledge of it on the 1st of October, whether how our data is being collected, how it's being collected. And it really does seem a bit concerning that all of my credit card details are going to be flashed around the internet somewhere, and for safekeeping it's going to be kept for 3 years, together with my home address, my telephone number, and lots of other personal data that perhaps I wouldn't normally like to be shared around like that. I think there's probably a lot more to come from this particular decree, and I can't see how they're going to get past data protection, and particularly the fact that it's a European law that they are bringing under question. So, well, I hope you found this interesting and informative, and please don't shoot the messenger. I'm just reading and applying some of the knowledge I've got just by looking this up, but also excuse me, looking at the reports in the newspaper about Big Brother. It does feel a little bit like Big Brother, and that does worry me a little bit. So thanks very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now.